The massive starship broke through Earth's atmosphere on a Tuesday morning, when most people were drinking their coffee and heading to work. The vessel was unlike anything humanity had ever seen before, with smooth silver surfaces that seemed to shift and shimmer in the sunlight. It moved without sound, hovering above the New Mexico desert like a dream that refused to fade. Commander Lisa Crawford stood in the control room of the Human Defense Headquarters, staring at the screens that showed the alien ship from every possible angle. She had trained for this moment for 15 years, ever since the first radio signals from deep space confirmed that humanity was not alone in the universe. But training and reality were two very different things. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the communication device. Beside her, Dr. Amy Phillips adjusted her glasses and studied the biological readings that were coming from the ship. The scanners showed life forms aboard, but the signatures were strange, almost familiar, yet completely alien. Amy had spent her entire career studying the possibility of extraterrestrial life. She had written papers and given lectures and dreamed of this day. Now that it was here, she felt a mixture of excitement and terror that made her stomach twist. The ship began to descend slowly and deliberately, choosing a flat area that the humans had prepared for first contact. A delegation of Earth's leaders had gathered, including military commanders, scientists, diplomats, and even a few carefully selected journalists who would document this historic moment for the rest of humanity. Security forces surrounded the landing zone, but everyone knew that if these aliens meant harm, there was little Earth's weapons could do against technology that could cross the stars. A ramp extended from the ship's lower section, touching the desert sand with barely a whisper. The gathered humans held their breath, waiting to see what would emerge from the depths of the alien vessel. Some expected monsters with too many limbs or eyes. Others hoped for beings of pure energy, or perhaps robots sent by their creators. What walked down that ramp exceeded everyone's expectations in ways they could never have imagined. Princess Kaylara stepped into the Earth sunlight, and the world seemed to pause. She stood nearly 7 feet tall with a slender, graceful build that suggested both strength and elegance. Her skin had a faint silver shimmer, as if she had been dusted with starlight. Her hair fell past her shoulders in waves of deep midnight blue. Her ears swept back from her head in elegant points, and her eyes were the color of amethysts, deep purple pools that seemed impossibly large and expressive. She wore robes that shifted colors as she moved, flowing from blue to purple to silver. But the princess was not alone. Behind her came two creatures that made several humans gasp and step backward. The dragons were not the massive fire-breathing beasts from Earth. Legends. These were sleeker, more serpentine, with bodies that moved like water. Their scales reflected light in shades of blue and green. Their wings folded tight against their sides, showing membranes thin enough to see through. The smaller dragon stood about the size of a large dog, while the larger one was nearly as big as a horse. Both had eyes that glowed with golden light and intelligence that was unmistakably sentient. The smaller dragon, which Kaylara would later introduce as Mist, pressed close to the princess's leg, moving with the loyalty of a devoted pet. The larger dragon. Riven surveyed the humans with a gaze that seemed to see through flesh and bone, judging and measuring each person present. Several soldiers shifted uncomfortably under that ancient stare. Lisa found her voice and stepped forward, keeping her movements slow and non-threatening. She had practiced this greeting 1,000 times in simulations. "Welcome to Earth," she said, her voice carrying across the silent desert. "On behalf of humanity, we greet you in peace." Kaylara smiled, and the expression transformed her already beautiful face into something that seemed to glow from within. "We come in friendship," she replied, her voice melodious with an accent that sounded almost musical. Her English was perfect, though clearly learned from Earth's broadcasts sent into space. "I am Princess Kaylara of the Ellery people, and these are my companions, Riven and Mist. We have traveled far to meet you." The formal introductions continued as diplomats and leaders came forward to shake hands or bow, depending on their cultural customs. Kaylara handled each interaction with grace, answering questions about her journey and her people. She explained that the Ellery had been watching Earth for many years, learning human languages and customs, preparing for this moment of contact. The dragons remained calm, Though Riven occasionally made a low, rumbling sound that vibrated through the ground, Amy found herself fascinated by the biological implications of what she was seeing. The princess appeared humanoid, but the readings showed genetic structures that were far more complex than human DNA. The dragons were equally puzzling. Their biology seemed to blend characteristics of reptiles, mammals, and something entirely unknown. She wanted to run tests to learn everything, but she also recognized the need for diplomacy and patience. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the delegation moved from the landing site to a specially prepared facility where more detailed discussions could take place. Kaylara walked between Lisa and Amy, answering their questions with enthusiasm. She spoke of her homeworld, Elaris, a planet of vast forests and crystal cities. She described her people's culture, their love of art and music, their deep connection to nature, and their reverence for the dragons that had been their companions for thousands of years. What she did not mention yet was the real reason for her visit. The desperate need that had driven the Alari to search the galaxy for a compatible species. The biological crisis that threatened to end their civilization. That truth would come later after bonds had been formed and trust established. For now, Kaylara played her role perfectly, the beautiful, charming princess who had come to forge an alliance between two peoples. The dragons sensed the truth in their mysterious way. They knew what was coming. They could feel the biological compatibility between their mistress and certain humans, especially the tall, sandy-haired pilot who had been assigned as military liaison. Mist pressed closer to Kaylara, offering comfort, while Riven's golden eyes followed Captain Troy Bennett with an intensity that made the young man uncomfortable, though he did not yet understand why. The first day of contact ended with a formal dinner where human and Ilari shared food and stories. The princess charmed everyone she met with her wit and warmth. By the time the stars came out above the desert facility, humanity had fallen under her spell, completely unaware of the chaos that was about to begin. The days following first contact fell into a careful routine. Princess Kaylara spent her mornings in diplomatic meetings, discussing trade agreements, technology sharing, and cultural exchange programs. The human leaders were eager to learn about Ilari science, especially their faster-than-light travel and energy manipulation techniques. In return, they offered Earth's resources, art, and the diversity of human culture that spanned thousands of languages and traditions. Captain Troy Bennett found himself spending more and more time with the princess. He had been assigned as her military liaison, responsible for her security and helping her understand Earth's defense capabilities. But the job had become something more than a simple assignment. Troy was 28 years old, a decorated fighter pilot with an easy smile and a reputation for staying calm under pressure. He had expected to be professional and distant. Instead, he found himself genuinely enjoying Kaylara's company. The princess was curious about everything. She wanted to taste every food, to hear every kind of music, to understand how humans lived and loved and dreamed. Troy took her to a baseball game where she cheered enthusiastically despite not understanding the rules. He showed her a sunset over the Grand Canyon and watched her eyes fill with wonder at Earth's natural beauty. He played her recordings of blues, jazz, and rock and roll, and she responded to each with genuine emotion. Amy watched this developing connection with growing concern. Her analysis of Ilari biology had revealed something troubling. The princess's genetic structure was incredibly adaptive, almost as if it had been designed to interface with other species. When Amy ran compatibility tests using samples Kaylara had willingly provided, the results shocked her. Ilari DNA could theoretically bond with human DNA in ways that should be impossible. The probability of successful hybridization was astronomically high. She brought her findings to Lisa late one evening, spreading printouts across the commander's desk. "This isn't natural," she explained, pointing to charts and graphs. "The Ilari genetic code has markers that suggest deliberate engineering. Someone modified their species at some point in their history. And look at these compatibility indicators with human DNA, they are off the charts." Lisa studied the data, her expression darkening. "What are you saying? That they came here specifically to breed with us?" Amy hesitated. "I am saying we need to be careful. The princess has been spending a lot of time with Captain Bennett. If there is any kind of biological interaction between them, we could be looking at consequences." We do not understand. But Lisa was reluctant to interfere. The alliance with the Alari was too important. Kailara had already shared technology that would advance Earth civilization by decades. Her people had offered protection from hostile alien species that humanity did not even know existed. Accusing the princess of ulterior motives based on biological speculation could destroy everything. So Lisa decided to watch and wait, a decision she would later regret. Meanwhile, the dragons were becoming more active. Riven and Mist had been docile, since arrival content to follow Kailara and observe the humans with their intelligent golden eyes. But now they seemed restless. Mist had begun following Troy whenever he was near, making soft chirping sounds that resembled purring Riven spent hours, with Kailara seeming to communicate through looks and gestures that no human could interpret. Troy noticed the change in the smaller dragon's behavior. Mist would often position herself between him and Kailara as if trying to push them closer together. The dragon's scales would shimmer and shift colors, becoming brighter when Troy and the princess stood near each other. He mentioned it to Kailara one afternoon as they walked through the facility's gardens. "Your dragons seem very intelligent," Ia said, watching Mist dart ahead on the path before circling back. "Are they truly pets or something more?" Kailara's expression became thoughtful. "They are companions," she explained. "Bonded to my family line for generations. They are not quite sentient, in the way you or I are, but they understand more than simple animals. They sense emotions, connections between beings." She paused, reaching down to stroke Mist's scaled head. "They are very interested in you, Troy." Felt his face warm. He had been trying to ignore his growing attraction to the princess. She was alien beautiful. Yes, but also kind and funny, with a quick mind and genuine warmth. Still, he knew the complications that any personal relationship would bring. She was royalty here to negotiate, on behalf of her entire species. He was just a pilot caught up in something far bigger than himself. That evening, Kailara invited Troy to a private dinner in her quarters aboard the Alari ship. She wanted to share traditional food from her homeworld and discuss Earth's military history away from formal meetings. Troy accepted, though he felt a flutter of nervousness that he had not experienced since his teenage years. The ship's interior was beautiful, organic curves and soft lighting that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Kailara's quarters were decorated with items from her homeworld, including musical instruments that looked like nothing on Earth, and plants that glowed faintly in the dim light. The dragons were there too. Riven, resting in one corner while Mist immediately approached Troy with enthusiastic chirps. The dinner was pleasant, filled with conversation and laughter. Kailara served dishes that ranged from familiar to bizarre. All delicious. Troy found himself relaxing, talking about his childhood dreams of flying his family back in Colorado, the losses he had experienced in his military career. Kailara listened with genuine interest, sharing her own stories of growing up in the palace on Alaris, the pressure of being a princess, the loneliness of royal duty. As the evening wore on, Troy noticed that Mist had moved closer, her small body pressing against his leg. The dragon's scales were warm, and they seemed to pulse with a faint light. Riven, too, had moved, positioning himself near Kailara. The air in the room felt different somehow, charged with an energy that made Troy's skin tingle. Kailara stood and moved to where Troy sat. She looked down at him, her purple eyes reflecting the soft light. "There is something I should tell you," she said softly. "My people sent me here for a reason beyond simple alliance." Before Troy could respond, Mist released a burst of energy that filled the room with shimmering light. Troy felt it wash over him, warm and strange. It did not hurt, but it changed something deep inside him. At the same moment, Riven released his own wave of energy, enveloping Kailara. The two energies swirled together, mixing and merging around the human and the Alari. "Princess," Troy tried to stand, but his legs would not respond. He saw Kailara reach for him, saw her own shock mirrored in her beautiful face. Then the world dissolved into light and sensation as their genetic codes reached across the void between species and found each other compatible. The bonding had begun far faster and more powerfully than anyone had anticipated. The dragons had done their work. Troy woke 3 days later in the medical bay of the human facility. His body felt different, stronger somehow, as if every cell had been upgraded. He could hear conversations from down the hall, smell the coffee brewing in the cafeteria 3 floors, below see individual dust particles floating in the sunlight streaming through the window. His senses had become incredibly sharp, overwhelming him with information he had never been able to process before. Amy was at his bedside, running scans with equipment that beeped and hummed. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes and her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. When she noticed Troy was awake, she immediately began asking questions. How do you feel? Can you move your fingers? Do you remember what happened? Troy sat up slowly, testing his limbs. Everything worked, but everything felt enhanced. I remember dinner with Kalara. He said, his voice rough from disuse. The dragons did something. There was light and energy, and then nothing. Where is she? Is she okay? Amy's expression tightened. She is in the next room. She has been unconscious for the same amount of time, Troy. What you experienced was a biological bonding process. The dragons somehow accelerated a genetic integration between your DNA and hers. We have never seen anything like it. Your body has been fundamentally altered at the cellular level before Troy could process this information. The door burst open and Lisa strode in, followed by 2 security guards. Her face was hard with barely controlled anger. Captain Bennett, you are confined to this facility until we understand what happened. The Alari ship has been surrounded and Princess Kalara is under guard. She claims the bonding was not intentional, but we cannot verify that Troy felt a surge of protectiveness that surprised him with its intensity. She is telling the truth. He said firmly, I was there. The dragons acted on their own. Kalara looked as shocked as I felt. Lisa studied him for a long moment. Then, you will not mind if we keep you separated until we have answers. She turned to Amy. Continue monitoring him. I want hourly reports on any changes. With that, she left the guards taking positions outside the door. Troy spent the next several hours being tested and questioned. He learned that his physical capabilities had increased dramatically. He was faster, stronger. His reflexes enhanced to superhuman levels. His aging process had slowed significantly. The tests suggested he might live for centuries. Now his brain showed increased activity in areas associated with empathy and connection. But most shocking was the revelation that came from a deep genetic scan. Amy delivered the news with a mixture of scientific fascination and human concern. The bonding process did more than just enhance you, she explained, showing him complex charts. You and Kalara are now linked on a biological level. Your genetic material has merged in ways that suggest. She paused, clearly uncomfortable. You are going to be a father. Troy, the princess, is pregnant. The room seemed to spin. Troy gripped the edge of the hospital bed, trying to process what he was hearing. That is impossible. We only had dinner. We did not even. The bonding itself initiated reproduction, Amy interrupted. The dragons released catalytic energies that facilitated genetic recombination between you and Kalara. Your DNA merged and created a viable embryo. The pregnancy is progressing at an accelerated rate. What would take 9 months in a human is happening in a matter of weeks. She pulled up another scan showing a tiny form already developing. And Troy, the fetus, shows characteristics of both species. This hybrid should not be possible, but it is happening. Troy demanded to see Kalara. The guards initially refused, but Lisa eventually agreed under strict supervision. He was led to the room next to his own, where the princess sat surrounded by medical equipment. She looked tired, but her face lit up when she saw him. Troy, she whispered, reaching out to him. He crossed the room in 3 quick strides, taking her hand. The moment they touched, both felt a jolt of recognition and connection. The bonding had created something between them that went beyond physical attraction. It was as if they could sense each other's emotions, feel each other's presence. I am sorry, Kalara said, her purple eyes filling with tears. This was not supposed to happen so fast. The bonding process usually takes months of careful preparation time to ensure both parties are willing and ready. Riven and Mist sensed our compatibility and they acted on instinct. They should not have been able to override protocols. But they did. Troy squeezed her hand. I do not blame you, and I do not blame the dragons. But we need to understand what this means for both of us. For the child, Kalara placed her free hand over her abdomen where new life was growing at an impossible pace. Our child will be extraordinary, she said softly. The first of a new kind. Strong, intelligent, capable of incredible things, but Troy, the implications go far beyond us. When my people learn of this successful bonding, they will see it as proof that the plan can work. What plan? Troy asked, though part of him already knew the answer. Kalara met his eyes steadily. My people are dying, she said, her voice heavy with the weight of truth carried. For centuries, our population has been declining. We have lost the ability to reproduce effectively. Our scientists estimate that within 5 generations the Alari will cease to exist. So we searched the galaxy for a species compatible enough to save us, and we found humanity. Troy pulled back slightly, processing this revelation. So, this was all planned. You came here to breed with us. Kalara flinched at his tone but did not look away. I came here to establish contact to see if the compatibility our scientists detected was real. I was supposed to spend months building relationships, gaining trust, preparing the way for voluntary bonding between willing participants from both species. She gestured helplessly. But the dragons sensed the strength of our connection, and they accelerated everything. Yes, Troy. My people hope that humans and Alari can create a future together. But I never meant to trap you into this. Before Troy could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, and automated voices announced an incoming fleet. Troy and Kalara both moved to the window, staring up at the sky where dozens of new ships were appearing, breaking through the atmosphere in formation. The Alari fleet had arrived. Amy rushed into the room, her tablet showing radar readings. They just appeared out of nowhere, she said breathlessly. 50 ships, maybe more. They are surrounding the planet. Lisa is trying to establish communication, but they are not responding to standard hailing frequencies. Kailara's face went pale. My mother? She whispered. Queen Vayara. She must have been monitoring my vital signs when the bonding completed. It triggered an automatic alert. She stood shakily, moving toward the door. I need to speak with her. I need to explain. But before anyone could stop her, the largest of the new ships began broadcasting a message across all channels. The voice was regal, commanding, and undeniably similar to Kailara's. People of Earth, this is Queen Vayara of the Alari. I come not as a conqueror, but as a mother concerned for her daughter, and as a leader seeking the future of both our species. Bonding between Princess Kalara and your Captain Bennett proves what our scientists believed: your species can save ours, and in return we offer you the stars. The Alari fleet maintained position around Earth, creating a blockade that made every human government nervous. Queen Vayara's ship descended to the same New Mexico facility where her daughter had first landed. But the atmosphere this time was far more tense. Military forces had been mobilized worldwide. Leaders demanded answers, and protests erupted in major cities as people debated whether the aliens were saviors or invaders, using advanced technology to subjugate humanity. Lisa stood in the main conference room facing a view screen filled with angry faces from the United Nations Security Council. They wanted her to take aggressive action, to demand the fleet withdraw, to threaten retaliation. But Lisa knew that Earth's weapons were useless against Alari technology. Any attempt at force would end badly for humanity. She needed to buy time to understand what the aliens truly wanted. Queen Vayara was nothing like her daughter. Where Kalara radiated warmth and youth, the queen embodied ancient power and regal authority. She was taller even than the princess, with hair that seemed woven from silver light and eyes that burned with violet fire. She wore armor that shifted and flowed like liquid metal, and when she moved it was with the absolute confidence of someone who had ruled for centuries. 2 massive dragons flanked her, each twice the size of Riven, their scales dark as midnight and their eyes blazing red. The queen swept into the conference room with Kalara hurrying. Behind her, mother, please, Kalara said in their own language. You are frightening them. This is not how we discussed approaching this situation. Vayara turned to her daughter, speaking English now. so the humans could understand. We discussed careful, gradual integration over years, but you have accelerated the timeline considerably, my child. She looked at Troy with an expression that was both measuring and approving. So this is the human male strong enough to bond with a princess of Alaris. Troy stood his ground despite every instinct telling him to show deference, Your Majesty. He said, keeping his voice steady. I did not know what was happening when the bonding occurred. If I had known, would you have refused? Vayara interrupted. Her tone was not unkind, merely curious. Would you have turned away from my daughter if you had understood the consequences? Troy glanced at Kaylara, seeing the hope and fear in her eyes. Honestly, I do not know, he admitted. But I deserved the choice. We both did. Vayara nodded slowly. You speak with honor, Captain Bennett. You are correct. Choice is sacred. That is why I am here, to ensure that what happens next is done properly. She turned to address Lisa and the other human leaders who had gathered. We Alari do not wish to conquer or control. We wish to survive, and we believe our survival is linked to yours. Amy stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her caution. Your Majesty, why are humans compatible with your species? Out of all the races in the galaxy, why us? The Queen's expression became distant, contemplative. Because you are like us, she said finally. Adaptable, resilient, creative. Your species has survived ice ages, plagues, wars that should have destroyed you. You have built civilizations that fell and rose again. You reach always upward toward the stars despite every setback. She gestured to the window where Earth hung beautiful and blue. This world has shaped you into beings of incredible potential, and your genetic code reflects that adaptability. She continued, explaining that Alari scientists had spent decades studying human DNA broadcast into space through various programs. They had found markers suggesting that humanity shared ancient ancestors with the Alari, perhaps seeded on Earth millions of years ago by a precursor race. The connection was distant but real enough to allow biological compatibility. But we need more than compatibility, Vayara said. We need willing participants. True bonding cannot be forced. It requires emotional connection, trust, genuine affection. She looked at Kaylara and Troy. That is what makes what happened between you two so remarkable. Not just the biological success, but the authentic bond that formed beforehand. The dragons sensed it. That is why they acted. Lisa finally spoke, her voice hard with suspicion. So what exactly are you proposing, that humans and Alari start interbreeding on a massive scale? Not massive, Vayara corrected, measured. Selected bonding between individuals. Who choose it? Your people would be carefully screened for compatibility, both genetic and emotional. We would not force anyone. You would offer volunteers who understand the implications. She paused. The children born from these unions would inherit the best traits of both species. They would be stronger, longer-lived, more capable than either parent species alone. And what happens to Earth during this process? Lisa demanded. Do we become a breeding ground for your species? Do we lose our autonomy? You gain protection, Vayara replied. There are hostile forces in this galaxy that have already noticed your world's radio broadcasts, species that see humans as prey or slaves or experiments. The Alari fleet shields you from these threats. She gestured to her guards. Bring in the data. Holographic displays sprang to life, showing images of alien races that looked nightmarish. Insectoid beings with razor limbs, massive creatures that existed in the vacuum of space, energy entities that consumed entire civilizations. These are the hunters, Vayara said grimly. They are coming. They will reach Earth within a decade, perhaps less. Without protection, your species faces extinction or worse. The room fell silent as humans processed this information. Troy felt Kaylara's hand slip into his, and he squeezed it gently. The threat was real. He could see it in the Queen's eyes. This was not manipulation or fear-mongering. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and humanity had been fortunate to remain isolated. For so long, Amy spoke up again, her mind racing through implications. If we agree to this bonding program, what guarantees do we have that our species remains human, that we do not simply become absorbed into the Ilari Veera? Smiled for the first time, and it softened her intimidating presence. Because hybrids will be raised to honor both heritages. Your culture's languages, traditions will continue. The children will be human and Ilari, both belonging to two species and creating something new. She looked at Kalara's abdomen where the first hybrid was growing. My grandchild will be taught the history of Earth and Alaris. They will speak English and Ilari. They will be a bridge between worlds. Over the next several days, negotiations continued. In earnest, the Ilari shared technology, medical advances, energy solutions that could transform human civilization. They demonstrated their defensive capabilities, destroying asteroids and disabling satellites with casual ease, showing both their power and their restraint. Human scientists, including Amy, worked with Ilari geneticists to understand the bonding process completely. Meanwhile, Kalara's pregnancy progressed rapidly. Within 2 weeks, she looked visibly pregnant. Within 3, she was moving carefully, holding her swollen belly. Troy stayed by her side, protective in ways that surprised him. The bond between them had deepened, becoming something neither could fully explain. They knew each other's moods, could sense when the other was in distress. Their connection was profound and unbreakable. Riven and Mist had become even more attentive. The dragons seemed proud of what they had facilitated. Amy's studies revealed that the dragons were not simple animals, but sophisticated, biological machines designed by ancient Ilari scientists to facilitate and protect bonding. They could sense genetic compatibility, detect emotional connections, and release catalytic energies that enabled reproduction between compatible species. The revelation sparked intense debate on Earth. Some saw the Ilari offer as salvation, a chance to join a galactic community and ensure humanity's survival. Others viewed it as colonization by another name, a slow assimilation that would end with humanity. Transformed beyond recognition, protests and counter-protests filled the streets. Religious leaders debated the theological implications. Scientists argued about genetic purity. Politicians schemed for advantage through it all. Troy and Kalara remained at the center of the storm, the first couple. The proof that human and Ilari could create something beautiful together. 4 weeks after the bonding, Kalara went into labor. The birth happened in a specially prepared medical facility, with both human doctors and Ilari healers standing by. Queen Veera was there, along with Lisa, Amy, and Troy, who refused to leave Kalara's side despite his obvious nervousness. The dragons, Riven and Mist, paced outside the room, their agitation felt by everyone in the building. The labor was difficult. Kalara's body was struggling to deliver a child that was larger and stronger than a full Ilari infant. Human doctors wanted to perform surgery, but the Ilari healers insisted that natural birth was essential for the bonding between mother and child to complete properly. Troy held Kalara's hand as she screamed and pushed her, silver skin covered in sweat, her face contorted with pain. Then finally, after hours of struggle, a baby's cry filled the room. The infant emerged perfect and beautiful, with skin that shimmered like starlight. Hair as black as space crowned her tiny head, and when she opened her eyes, they glowed with power that made even Queen Veera step back in surprise. The baby's eyes shifted between her father's brown and her mother's purple, settling on a striking amber that seemed lit from within. Troy stared at his daughter, overwhelmed with emotions he could not name. She was tiny in the nurse's arms, but he could feel the energy radiating from her. The bond he shared with Kalara extended to this child, connecting the three of them in ways that transcended normal family relationships. He reached out tentatively, and the baby grasped his finger with surprising strength. "She is magnificent," Veera whispered, moving closer to study her grandchild. "Look at her energy signature. It is beyond anything. We predicted this child will be extraordinary." They named her Maya after Troy's grandmother, a human name for a child who is both human and Ilari. Maya's birth changed everything. The debate on Earth shifted from abstract discussion to concrete reality. People saw images of the baby, watched videos of Troy and Kalara introducing their daughter to the world. The sight of a human man and an alien princess holding their hybrid child together softened many hearts. But Maya's power became apparent quickly. Within days, she was lifting objects with her mind, communicating telepathically with the dragons, showing abilities that neither species possessed alone. Riven and Mist were utterly devoted to her, acting as guardians and playmates. The baby's intelligence was also remarkable. She seemed to understand language within weeks, grasping concepts that should take years to develop. Emmy studied Maya extensively, with Kailara's permission, documenting every aspect of her development. The hybrid's genetic code was stable, combining the best traits of both parent species. Maya would grow faster than a human child, but not as fast as an Ilari. She would live for centuries, maintaining her youth and health. She had enhanced strength, speed, and senses, along with abilities like telepathy and energy manipulation that were completely new. Other bondings began to occur. Volunteers from both species stepped forward, carefully screened for genetic compatibility and emotional readiness. Troy's friend, Lieutenant Kate Morrison, bonded with an Ilari male named Theron, producing twins within months. A scientist from Japan named Dr. Hana Tanaka bonded with an Ilari researcher, and they began documenting their experiences, helping others understand the process. Each bonding was unique, but all resulted in children of remarkable capability. The program expanded slowly, carefully monitored by councils composed of both humans and Ilari. Lisa worked with Ilari administrators to establish guidelines, ensuring that all participants were fully informed, willing, and supported. Queen Vayara proved to be an honorable partner, respecting human autonomy, even as she guided the integration of the two species. 6 months after Maya's birth, the first hostile alien contact occurred. A ship from a species called the Krell entered the solar system, clearly intending to raid Earth for resources and specimens. The Ilari fleet responded immediately, engaging the Krell vessel with overwhelming force. The battle lasted less than an hour, ending with the Krell ship destroyed and Earth protected. Humanity watched from the ground, seeing proof that Vayara's warnings had been real. Troy stood with Kailara and Maya on a hillside, watching the distant flashes of weapons fire in orbit. The baby was growing rapidly, already looking like a toddler despite being only months old. She pointed at the lights in the sky with pudgy fingers, making sounds that were almost words. "We are safe," Troy said, holding Kailara close. "Because of your people, because of our people," Kailara corrected. "We are not Ilari and human anymore. We are becoming something new together." The integration continued over the following years. Hybrid children grew up learning both cultures, speaking multiple languages, bridging the gap between species. They attended schools where human and Ilari teachers worked together. They played with both human and Ilari friends. They became living symbols of cooperation and hope. Maya grew into a remarkable young girl. Her abilities continued to develop, and she became a leader among the hybrid children, guiding them, helping them control their powers, teaching them to honor both parts of their heritage. She had her father's courage and her mother's wisdom, combined with abilities that awed everyone who met her. Troy and Kailara's relationship deepened into genuine love. The bonding had initiated their connection, but they chose to build on it every day. They married in a ceremony that combined human and Ilari traditions, witnessed by thousands in person and billions watching across both worlds. Their marriage became a template for others, showing that bonds formed quickly could mature into lasting partnerships. The Ilari population stabilized and began to grow again as hybrid children reached maturity and began forming their own families. Earth's technology advanced by centuries. As Ilari knowledge became freely shared, humans gained access to the stars, establishing colonies on Mars and beyond, protected by the Ilari fleet and guided by hybrid children who could survive in environments that would kill either parent species. Queen Vayara eventually stepped down from her throne, naming Maya as her heir. A hybrid would rule the Ilari people for the first time, leading them into a future where the distinction between human and Ilari would eventually fade into irrelevance. The two species were merging not through conquest or assimilation, but through genuine connection and shared purpose. Lisa retired from military service, becoming an ambassador to the new Galactic Council. Where Earth now had a voice, Amy won numerous awards for her research on hybrid genetics, advancing medical science in ways that benefited both species. The dragons Riven and Mist lived on, bonding with Maya and continuing their ancient purpose of facilitating connections. Troy stood in his backyard, 50 years after that first contact, watching Maya play with her own children, teaching them to fly using abilities that combined Ilari energy manipulation with human determination. He was over 70 but looked 30. The hybrid bonding having extended his life significantly. Kailara stood beside him, still beautiful, her purple eyes warm with contentment. Was it worth it? She asked softly. The chaos, the fear, the loss of what you were. Troy pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. We did not lose what we were, he said. We became more. Both of us together. Above them, the sky was filled with ships, human Ilari and hybrid vessels traveling freely between worlds. The galaxy that had once been empty and silent was now full of possibilities. And at the center of it all were the children of two species who had found each other across the stars and chosen to build a future together. The chaos had given way to harmony. The suspicion had transformed into trust, and Princess Kailara's mission to charm humanity had succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams, not through deception, but through genuine connection, love, and the universal desire to survive and thrive together. The dragons had known from the beginning that Troy and Kailara were meant to be together. They had simply helped destiny along.